So when it comes to espresso, it's needless to say I'm not a pro at espresso. I mostly still am like a pour-over kind of guy. But when we do pour-overs, you can actually see a lot of things that can actually help you understand how espresso works. Now, the first thing is to note that I always think that coffee talks to us through the gases. Now, when we pull espresso shots, we have the crema. The crema is kind of like the gases we have in a pour-over. The beans themselves, when you're doing pour-overs, you can see that certain beans have more gases than others. The same thing would happen in espresso. So certain coffees, like a darker coffee or natural processes or someone with lower densities, they can actually have a lot more gases. So the gases affects how the brew happens itself. That's regardless. So when I do espresso shots, I actually kind of think of it more as how do we kind of affect the gases? How do we change it? And then how do we actually pull our shots to match those? Now, in pour-overs, there's a couple things that really come to mind for me. One of them is actually how fast it clogs. Now, clogging has always been something I talk about, which is why I do so much, work with like microfines and stuff like that. But when it comes to espresso, you can actually clog it, and it gets so packed that the water flows back up and in through your grinder, or in through the espresso machine. Now, you don't want that to happen, so we need to find out where and how we manage the flow rate. Now, when it comes to pour-overs, if you pour slower, you're going to have less clogging. You're going to be able to pull more flavors out because you're going to be suspending it. Now, I assume that something similar would happen in an espresso machine. If you have a lower and slower flow rate, you're going to clog a little bit later because you're just going to have less force pushing everything through. So yesterday, you can see that my setup was a little bit messy. Thanks, Mark, for pointing that out. I'm sorry about that. I was just doing a lot of testing, trying to translate my pour-over theories into the espresso side. So a couple of things that come to mind is kind of like the volume. So in a pour-over, if the volume or the bed depth isn't very thick, your first drip comes out, which is why I have this whole issue with like flat bottoms versus like, conicals. It's because the first drip could come out very quickly. Now in espresso, because the volume is always going to be the same, your portafilter basket always has a certain amount of height. I like to just base everything off the exact same kind of bed depth. Now, every bean itself has a different weight per volume, I guess you would say. So there's more quote-unquote flavors or less flavors based on that. Now, certain coffees, they have less weight to them, and they have more gases coming through. So there's a lot of things we have to keep in mind when we're pulling espresso shots. So volume's a very big thing, and then the ratio should be kind of based on that volume. Now, it's kind of weird how I do volume-based brews, but it's just how much water is necessary to extract the flavors. So even in espresso, you can tell how much flavors are being extracted at a certain point in time. It's when the stream has a different coloration. Certain colors, like a lighter color, means certain flavors are just kind of, maybe it's done being brewed or maybe it's done being extracted. When the stream turns really clear, you definitely know you're just having very flavorless water coming out. So to pull the perfect espresso shot, we need to know when to stop based on the bean itself. Luckily for you guys, I have the decent espresso. Everything on this machine is programmable. I can change the flow rate and everything to kind of test a lot of things. In the near future, actually, in the next couple of days, I'll be posting a lot more content around the espresso machine and then how we can translate what we know about the pour-overs into espressos. I'm already finding a lot of success. So if you guys have any kind of like suggestions or you want me to try certain things, please like leave it in the comments below. Let me know. In my last video, somebody suggested that when I stopped the water flow rate, my pressure was not there. And so my pre-infusion was done incorrectly. Thank you very much for that, actually. I learned a lot from that. I'm taking that and I'm pulling a much better shot just because I'm continually having a certain amount of pressure in there. Now, the first thing I want to try is actually the flow rate, because when I pull or when I do pour-overs, I really like to have a low and slow pour. And I think that's really important. But the problem with low and slow means you don't necessarily have the same amount of pressure. I noticed that when you have a faster flow rate, you actually have a higher amount of pressure coming through. So It's just about balancing the flow rate and then the grind size to match for it. This way, once we have the constant, which is filling up the puck or the portafilter completely, if we can figure out the constant of flow rate that I think is ideal for coffees, the only variable left would be the grind size, and then the grind size and probably the pre-infusion time. Now, on an overall side, I think pre-infusion is based, or the time for pre-infusion is based on the amount of gases the coffee bean has. Certain beans, like I said, have more gases, and those require a longer pre-infusion. Having the long pre-infusion is nice because it helps you distribute the pressure evenly between the beans. So somebody like me who doesn't have a full WDT setup or any of the fancy espresso gear, I can pull a really, really good balanced shot just because I have a longer pre-infusion. So yeah, these are just some of the little findings I have when it comes to pulling espresso shots. But let me know what you guys think. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I know this is kind of like a dry video. It's a lot of interesting shots I'm going to put in here, but thanks for watching. Yeah, subscribe if you haven't already, and catch you guys in the next one. Bye!